Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in.
Happy Thursday, everybody. Yesterday, Wednesday, Chinese leader Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived in Kazakhstan for this year's Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. Founded in 2001 by China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan to combat terrorism and promote border security, in 2017 the bloc expanded to include India and Pakistan. Currently, the bloc represents more than 40% of the world's population and roughly a quarter of the global economy. However, in recent years, the SCO has grown more in line with Beijing and Moscow's shared ambition to counter what they argue is US and Western hegemony and reshape the international system. Indian Prime Minister Modi is skipping the event this year, perhaps a sign of Indian unease towards this shift, especially for a Sino-centric new global order. India and China are regional rivals. Before the summit kicked off, Xi and Putin had their own meeting, with both sides praising the state of the bilateral ties. Their relationship was, quote, not directed against anyone, end quote, said Putin. Chinese state media reports that Xi said both sides should uphold, quote, the unique value of Russia-China relations, end quote, given what he called an, quote, international situation fraught with turbulence, end quote. But while Sino-Russian relations are at a high point, and it appears that the personal relationship between Xi and Putin is strong, the fact remains that both nations have historically been geopolitical rivals, sometimes dangerously so, especially in the region where they are currently meeting. For the two land-based powers, Central Asia is an increasingly important thoroughfare. It gives Putin more direct access to markets in South Asia, where there are dynamic players like India and others, and it is central to Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative. Across the region, Beijing is drawing local economies into its orbit, however. Chinese investments are diverting the region's young workers away from Russia. As the US-based Wall Street Journal puts it, quote, in Central Asia, which Moscow regards as its backyard, the friendship that both have declared to have no limits is colliding with Beijing's global ambitions. China has seized on the Ukraine invasion to chip away at traditional Russian spheres of influence. In Central Asia, as in the Arctic, Moscow's reliance on Beijing to sustain its war machine forces it to acquiesce to the encroachments, end quote. Indeed, as we've discussed in previous videos, in a reversal from the Soviet era, Russia is increasingly looking like a little brother in the partnership, or from Moscow's perspective, even worse. In a recently published report called China and Russia, the True Nature of Their Cooperation, Callum Fraser, a research fellow in the International Security Studies Department at UK-based Royal United Services Institute for Defence and Security Studies, observed, quote, with Russia's economy concentrated on supporting the war effort in Ukraine, its exports have become focused on shipping fossil fuels and other raw materials to Eastern partners. Meanwhile, imports from China now cover a diverse field of industrial and consumer goods. This asymmetrical balance is forecasted to increase over the coming years as Russia struggles to survive on its war economy, and consequently, China will become an even more important lifeline for the Russian state. Russia finds itself increasingly reliant on a partner with historical grievances as well as ambitions in its own backyard. If Russia continues to stagnate, it must either make further concessions regarding its geopolitical position within Eurasia or risk severing its life support mechanism, end quote. However, the report still warns a Western audience, quote, Sino-Russian relations are strengthening in the political, economic, and military domains, posing a direct threat to Western security interests. The long-term dynamics of this relationship suggest a purely transactional approach, with China exploiting Russia's economic weaknesses. However, the war in Ukraine also presents an opportunity for China to bleed Western resolve, drain NATO resources, and distract attention from Beijing's interests in the Indo-Pacific, end quote. Meanwhile, in a report published this week citing unnamed sources, US-based Bloomberg writes that Chinese and Russian companies are developing an attack drone similar to an Iranian model deployed in Ukraine. Quote, a sign that Beijing may be edging closer to providing the sort of lethal aid that Western officials have warned against, end quote. According to the sources, reportedly EU and US officials, the companies held talks in 2023 about collaborating to replace Iran's Shahed drone and started developing and testing a version this year in preparation for shipment to Russia. The Chinese drones have yet to be used in Ukraine, they said. Quote, providing Russia a Shahed-like attack drone would mark a deepening of Beijing's support for Russia, despite repeated warnings from the US and its allies. President Xi Jinping has sought to portray China as neutral in the conflict in Ukraine, even as Western officials say it's provided components and other support for President Vladimir Putin's forces. End quote. Ukraine President Zelensky said in an interview on Wednesday with Bloomberg Television that he has read this report, expressing, quote, we don't have 100% evidence that Chinese weapons are shipped to Russia. The Chinese leader told me that he won't do that. Some components are there, like for drones, some dual use, they are probably there, but those are not only Chinese. They are also shipped from some European countries, unfortunately, and one can fight that. I think that if the Chinese leader wanted this not to happen, it would not happen. End quote. Next up, this is a bit of a funny story, but I do think it's worth noting. Shanghai-based English-language outlet Sixth Tone writes this week that in China, concerns are rising about the risks posed by hyper-realistic silicone masks that can be used to impersonate another person or even hack into facial recognition systems. In China, you can order very lifelike custom silicone face masks based on 3D scans or facial features and head dimensions and 360-degree head photos. But the industry has attracted a lot of attention, with some stories of criminals having used them to go through facial scanning systems and commit crimes. The Sixth Tone article explains that despite Chinese authorities' efforts to raise awareness of the risks posed by silicone masks, the products can still easily be purchased online, with vendors promising that they can fool facial recognition scanners. The masks can cost anything from a few yuan to 25,000 yuan. $3,400. High-end masks require up to 1 month to produce. Sixth Tone found that a sample search using the phrase silicone face mask on the e-commerce platform Taobao yielded hundreds of results. Quote, when we contacted one mask vendor posing as a customer, the person confirmed that they could create a mask based on a person's face. No further information regarding the customer's identity or how they intended to use the mask was required. End quote. State-run Legal Daily published a long piece on the industry, with commentators arguing that this suggests that a crackdown could be coming. The article included, quote, when asked if personal information was acquired, 6 sellers replied no, and did not inquire about the purpose of purchasing the mask. In the product reviews, many customers asked if the silicone mask could pass facial recognition checks. Some buyers replied that wearing silicone masks allowed them to pass facial recognition for work attendance. Sellers also claimed that custom silicone masks have over 90% similarity to real people, making it possible to clock in and out of work without issues. End quote. Next up, in a piece published today, UK-based The Financial Times argues that Chinese students and young professionals in the US have been asked to, quote, spread propaganda as China demands increasing loyalty from its diaspora amid rising tensions between the two superpowers. End quote. The outlet reports that demands are increasingly being placed on Chinese nationals who joined the Communist Party as students or workers before they left home, in the hopes of career advancement once they eventually return. The directives have included participating in webinars during which they are coached to promote China's image in front of their American peers, paying membership dues to the Communist Party, studying political material sent from China, and checking in with party officials to ensure their continued loyalty. To end today's video, we will examine some of the article, but just quickly, if you're getting some value from today's episode generally, it's a huge help if you can hit the like button. Sharing and subscribing is a big help as well. Thank you so much, everybody. Now, we examine this Financial Times article, which we're now quoting selected excerpts from directly. By some estimates, at least 10,000 members of the party are studying or working in the US. This is a small fraction of the 5.4 million Chinese diaspora, but many are in top roles at leading universities and corporations in the technology and finance sectors. The directives have included participating in webinars during which they are coached to promote China's image in front of their American peers. In interviews with 10 party members studying and working in the United States, students said they had followed the demands to speak positively about China in public, while employees said they sought to hide their links to the party when applying for US work visas, denying membership when asked. It is not illegal for Chinese immigrants to remain members of its Communist Party while in the US, but some in the US view the membership as a potential security risk, as it can raise other legal and immigration complications. US lawyers said the efforts may also risk putting CCP members in violation of a law aimed at curbing foreign influence on American public opinion, known as the Foreign Agents Registration Act. The law requires individuals to register with the Department of Justice as foreign agents if they are conducting publicity work at the request of foreign governments or politicians. In a report published in February, a party secretary at the Global Affairs Office of Shanghai University said it should train overseas student members to become disseminators of positive China stories. In interviews, Chinese student party members in New York, Boston, California, and Washington told the Financial Times they followed the requests from party cells in China as they were keen to maintain their membership, which they saw as an asset for their career development. They also said they occasionally participated in online webinars on how to tell a good China story to their American peers. "I need to stay in touch with the party so I can get good opportunities when I come back to China one day," said a graduate student in Boston, who said he once raised talking points given by the party in class. 5 Chinese passport holders working in leading technology companies in California and New York said they had denied being a member of the party for work visa applications. The Chinese workers said they made the decision for fear their political affiliation may prevent them from obtaining US permanent residence or green cards in the coming years. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a great Thursday, and I will see you all tomorrow.